this is 100% a spot where I'm going Texas if I'm betting this game. The entire public is on Ohio State. The line's not getting bigger. That means all the big money, all the sharps are coming in on Texas. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. He needs his vote pulled immediately. And I'll say, I don't care. The leader, the boss. Where is Josh Heupel? The largest humans he can find. You got Miami and Georgia and Florida State and Tennessee and Texas A&M. Kirby wants you. LSU and Ole Miss. Not even a football player, but he's 6'10", 334. Kirby said, sign me up. That's all they've got to offer when it comes to a defensive player. What could they possibly say other than, how down do you have to be for a win? Let us pay you. All they got to be is enormous. What could they possibly say? Knock the team out west. Oh, well. They'll take him if they're lowly rated, too. I'm not some guy who's some Big Ten homer. Behind that, I will never find it acceptable. I want to see it, man, because they've got nothing else to go on. And welcome to Juck on College Football. Thank you so much for joining me. We are one day out, guys, from Notre Dame and Penn State. I absolutely can't wait. I'll be live here on the channel calling the game and having the chat open so we can shoot the breeze about the game as we watch Penn State and Notre Dame and what is this four-pack of teams here with three blue bloods in Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and then Penn State, who's kind of just outside that, in that next four outside of the 8 traditional blue bloods. I think it's really cool, man. I think it's one of the coolest Final Fours we've ever had, and I think the Notre Dame Penn State matchup is incredibly fun. My personal opinion is that Penn State is going to get their number, just more explosive players on offense. We know that Jeremiah Love is now going to play for Notre Dame, but he's kind of dinged up. That leaves Riley Leonard as their whole offense. I just don't think there's enough explosion on the Notre Dame team to be able to get this done. I do see Penn State winning the game. I'm also a big Drew Aller fan because he's from like 10 miles that direction, and I watched him play a lot of high school football. I think he's a really awesome kid, so I do kind of root for him. However, I got no skin in the game. I don't really care who wins, but pop in and check us out here. We'll be live streaming during that game, and we'll talk about it. This playoff this year, turns out I was against it. I didn't want a 12-team playoff, but this year was the perfect year for it. We've got nobody who is the classic juggernaut team, and the Final Four, should the favorites win these semifinal games, the top 4 teams will not, the teams that would have made the 4-team playoff will not be in the championship game. Not one of them. Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and Penn State all will be gone if the favorites win in these semifinals. That would have been our Final Four last year. That's pretty wild to think about. And these teams, there's just not that true juggernaut from start to finish. We look at Ohio State right now. Yeah, they look like the big-time odds-on favorite to win it right now. We've also seen them suck this year. We've seen them get outplayed this year. We saw Nebraska give them a hell of a game. We obviously saw Michigan punk them. We saw them lose at Oregon. Like, we've seen – they could have lost at Penn State. We've seen this Ohio State team look very mortal. We've seen this coaching staff at Ohio State make some very puzzling decisions. So there is no true juggernaut, and that's what makes this playoff so much fun. And thank goodness that this was the year they implemented it. It was the perfect year to implement it. So I brought my buddy College Football with Sam on to talk to me about the Notre Dame Penn State game, about the Ohio State Texas game. And I'm going to ask you what I asked Sam. Hypothetically, longtime athletic director at Oklahoma, Joe Castiglione, retires. Oklahoma calls you and they say, I'm going to name you the AD. You're trying to get Oklahoma back to a national championship contender, at least competitive for SEC championships now that they're in the SEC. And you can only choose one. Well, obviously you fire Brent Venables because he sucks, but you got to hire one coach out of these Final Four: James Franklin, Sark, Marcus Freeman, or Ryan Day. Ryan Day, 6 years at Ohio State, first-time head coach, took over a program from Urban Meyer that was one of the top 4 programs in the country, top dog in the Big Ten. He's been able to maintain the standing of Ohio State, I think, in the country. Big Ten, doesn't quite feel like that right now. You look at Sark in his 4th year at Texas, back-to-back Final Fours, and now a perennial contender with a loaded roster. A crazy good job by Sark. This is his 3rd head coaching job, so an experienced guy as well. James Franklin, been at Penn State for a decade, coming off of his best season and 2 playoff wins this year. Marcus Freeman, what a job he's done. Brian Kelly could not get done at Notre Dame what Marcus got done in 3 years. And beating Georgia in a big-time game was the biggest win they've had in 30 years. So his future looks incredibly bright. What order? Who are you picking? Let me know in the comments. All that and more in my conversation with Sam. Before we get there, I'm going to please ask you to subscribe to the new channel for me. I'll be focusing a whole lot more on this channel in the offseason, all college football, all the time. We got a crazy offseason coming. Join me, please. And thanks. When we look at this Texas team, this defensive line, I mean, run stuffers, pass rushers, they're really, really good. Great linebacking crew, great secondary. Obviously, the strength of their team, and by every metric, this Texas team is in the top 5 defensively, right along with Ohio State, slightly behind them, but they're right there. And when we look at the Buckeye offense going up against these guys, I think it's going to be maybe their stiffest test of the season. What is your take on the ceiling for what Ohio State's offense can do against these guys?
Oh, that is a scary question. I would say that the range of outcomes for the offense is definitely wider than the past 2 games. But ceiling, what can they do? I mean, I feel like just because Texas has been inconsistent on offense and they have a habit of leaving their defense on the field forever in the second half, if that happens and Ohio State's able to click and expose some things through the air, well, they could probably like find a path to score, upper 30s or lower 40s, probably. But I think that's definitely the ceiling there, and I don't think that's the most likely outcome. I mean, you already talked about their defensive line. They have 8, 9, 10 playable defensive linemen. Like they're insanely deep. They rotate a lot. And Colin Simmons is one of the best players in the country as a true freshman, has 9 sacks. And I think their D line is close to Michigan, about Penn State caliber. And that's a really, really good unit. You already mentioned their linebackers too. And also they have the Thorpe Award winner, Jahdae Barron, who's a future NFL corner, and others in that secondary room. So that's the fascinating matchup, is Texas's defense against Ohio State's offense for sure.
When we flip to the other side of the ball, Sam, the Texas offense against the Ohio State defense, I think that their ceiling is a lot lower. When we look at their toughest competition this year against A&M, against Georgia twice, and these guys can't crack 20 points. I just think that if they get to 24, that's a really good effort. And honestly, I think that's where the game is won by Ohio State, that side of the ball. Quinn obviously has the talent, and that's the crazy thing. When we look at this Texas team, tons of talent. I mean, they're damn near as talented as Ohio State. When we look at, recruiting rankings and blue chips and 5 stars and 4 stars, they are incredibly talented, tons of NFL players everywhere. But offensively, they just have not been able to get it clicking throughout the season like the Buckeyes have been able to. And I think that this is the side of the ball that determines the game. I think that the Buckeye defense, the way they're playing, is going to be able to hold them under that 24 points, which is, to me, their ceiling. And ultimately, that's what I think wins the game.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty logical opinion. I think that Texas's ceiling on offense is a lot lower. If Texas wants to win the game, what they have to do is make it dirty, and they have to muddy it up. And I don't know how much rushing offense they have to find, but probably some of it. And they've really struggled running the football this year. I mean, yeah, they're close to Ohio State in so many metrics talent-wise. In fact, when you look at like projected first rounders, they may actually have more, but the difference is they're not clicking. And they've had a ton of inconsistencies, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where it just feels like they haven't figured out their ceiling yet, while Ohio State clearly has.
Philosophically, I want to ask you something about this playoff and about this structure. So Ohio State has had, they had 3 weeks off from Michigan to Tennessee. Then they had 10 days off from Tennessee to Oregon. They were able to rest their starters late in both games. Texas, on the other hand, down the stretch, they went from Texas A&M straight into the SEC championship game against Georgia. They lose that game. 2 weeks later, they're playing Clemson. 10 days later, Arizona State, now Ohio State. So they played one more game, much less rest in between. This is a pretty drastic difference. And that is the track for the loser of the conference championship games. They also have the 17-game route to the national championship when everybody else has 16. It's a really big punishment and a disadvantage for the loser of those games. And it is why, in my opinion, you cannot also then drop them below an idle team should they lose. And the reason I'm bringing this up, Penn State, they head into the conference championship game. They're ahead of Ohio State in the rankings. They are 11-1, Ohio State 10-2, but Ohio State with the head-to-head win. And you can debate at that point whether or not you think Ohio State should be ahead of them or not. Besides the point, Penn State went into the game rated ahead of Ohio State. Now, Penn State loses a close game where they perform pretty damn well. I think we can all agree on that. And now when we look at them coming out of the game, Penn State has 2 losses, as does Ohio State. They do have one more P5 win, but Ohio State has the head-to-head. Ohio State, I think everybody would agree, has the better resume at that point. And if we were just grading them right there, Ohio State would get the nod. However, Penn State earned the right to go play that extra game. And that's why, in including how much of a tougher road it is when you already lose, I don't think you can drop that team below a team that is idle. Where do you weigh out on that? I think it's a really big point of contention that we're going to continue to see as we move forward with the playoff.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I believe that if you're Texas or Penn State, what you're saying is, well, thankfully, even with Texas playing the close game, like thankfully we're deeper rosters and we haven't faced a team of Ohio State's caliber beforehand because, yeah, or for Penn State, Notre Dame, like the 2 teams they played originally were a little bit easier. But I agree with that. And I think that, it's hard to punish conference championship game participants. And with the Ohio State Penn State head-to-head thing, my thought process was just intuitively, yeah, Ohio State has the head-to-head and they've played the tougher strength of schedule, but Penn State probably beats Michigan if Michigan plays them in Happy Valley. And I think that losses matter, same with wins, but more importantly to what you were saying, Penn State, they earned the right to be in that extra game. So did Oregon. Same with Texas versus Georgia. Texas was kind of in the position that Oregon was, where they were first in regular season standings. So they won the SEC regular season. Now, their track, of course, wasn't as hard as Georgia's was. Strength of schedule will tell you that. Then they lost to Georgia, and now they have an extra game to play. They have less rest time. And I don't know how, I think there's some disadvantages there. I don't know how much there is because some people have brought up that all the teams who got a bye lost, but I think a huge part of that's the fact that the teams who got a bye and lost were just inferior to the teams that they played.
100%.
Yeah, like Arizona State and Boise State, drastically inferior. Georgia was inferior to Notre Dame, and Oregon was clearly inferior to Ohio State. So I think that it's wise to not punish a conference champion unless, let's say, for whatever reason, Ohio State and I don't know, like some crazy scenario where they both have one loss. Penn State somehow gets in due to some weird tiebreaker. And now that Penn State has 2 losses and Ohio State has 1, then Ohio State, I think, could deservingly be ranked ahead. That's just kind of my weird opinion on it.
How fickle we are as college football fans. I'm very happy the way it shook out, that Ohio State was able to get the Tennessee-Oregon route rather than that 5 seed route that Penn State got. When we look at Sark, obviously a really good coach. I think a lot of people forget that this is his I think 10th season as a head coach, and just is it four? Is his fourth year at
Yes,
Texas?
fourth year at
Fourth
Texas.
year at Texas. Took them from 5-7 to 8 wins, and now back to back in the Final Four. Winning those 2 playoff games this year, the season that they had this year in their first year in the SEC, I think should they lose this game to Ohio State, Texas fans are viewing this still as a smashing success and are very happy with the program that is now sitting on top of the world as a perennial contender. They're going to enter next season in the top 3 again. I think they're a very happy crew. When we look at Notre Dame, obviously that win against Georgia automatically makes this a hugely successful season. They've been
Yes.
waiting for a win like that forever. They finally got it. Penn State, this is James Franklin's best year, now having won 2 playoff games, earning their way into the Final Four for the first time. I think that everybody is kind of going for broke. They got nothing to lose except for Ohio State. I still think all the pressure is on the Buckeyes. And as I was talking to Chris the other day, if the Buckeyes lose this game as the favorite, now it's going to feel a lot better this offseason because of those 2 big wins against Tennessee and against Oregon. No doubt about it. The tenor is much different than had you lost to Tennessee. No doubt, right? But at the same time, you still were 1-1 against Oregon, 1-1 against the SEC, 0-1 against Michigan, 0-3 for the season goals, 0-12 for the seniors goals. Ultimately, no, it's not gonna have the same feeling around Ohio State as it is for the rest of these 3 programs in this thing. I think that puts Ohio State at a little bit of a disadvantage. But as we look at the team, the makeup of this team, I just feel so much mental strength. I feel so much different energy from these guys. I just got a whole lot of confidence that they're going to go into this game. None of this other noise is going to matter, and they're going to handle their business. It just feels like a unit, a team of destiny. It's the season of dreams, Sam.
Yeah, I mean they're at minus odds to win it all. So I
It's
think
crazy.
that should provide some confidence, if any. I do agree with you that, yeah, the pressure is all on them. Now, from my personal opinion, Texas and Notre Dame should be happy about their year, especially Notre Dame, because they have not
Oh
had
yeah.
2 wins like that in the postseason forever. I feel like Penn State, with the draw they got, I feel like for their season to be a success, I think they have to at least win the Orange Bowl. Whatever happens in the title happens. But SMU and Boise they're not Ohio State, they're not Oregon caliber, and I feel like it would be very impactful for them to beat a team analytically of that caliber, so that, James Franklin earns like a true top 10, top 5 power rated win and can play for a title. But yeah, for Ohio State, I think that beating Tennessee and beating Oregon helps. It provides optimism. But if they do somehow lose to Texas in the Cotton Bowl, from my point of view, I'm looking at Ohio State again with a more positive angle, but the season's still overall a failure. It'd be different if they beat Oregon, like if they were 2-0 against them, or at least if they beat Michigan, and then maybe the conversation's different.
Right.
But the regular season happenings make it so that I think at minimum you have to play in the title game. And more likely than not, at minimum, you have to win the whole thing for the year to not be more of a failure than a success. But yeah, I think the team has done a good job, just from what I've seen. I'm not an insider, obviously, of staying humble and doing their best to ignore the outside noise. I know that, as I told someone, it feels like everyone and their, dead dog buried is picking Ohio State to win this game. And that is a concern, because Vegas doesn't lose to the public, but that's not a guarantee, of course, that Texas is going to win here, because Ohio State is the better team and they're favored by 6 points. So they can win and Vegas can still win. I mean, the spread's huge. Ohio State's figured themselves out. I think Texas is still figuring themselves out. It's just going to be a good game that I'm very excited for. A lot of different storylines to follow.
anybody who follows my show, I'm big on picking spots. And if I don't gamble on the Buckeyes, but boy, this is 100% a spot where I'm going Texas. If I'm betting this game, the entire public is on Ohio State. The line's not getting bigger. That means all the big money, all the sharps are coming in on Texas. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. And I really hate the way people are talking about it. Like it's just almost like a foregone conclusion that this game's almost, it's just got to be played. It's a formality. Um, when you've got a team like Texas, and this is a talent equated matchup, anything can happen. Anything can happen. So that does make me a little nervous, a little on edge. But ultimately, I do got the Buckeyes winning this one, 31-24. Do you have a score prediction for this one? Are you ready to give that out?
Yes. I'm gonna watch some film, release a deep dive tomorrow that may have a different one, but right now I'm sitting at 24-17 Ohio State. I think the offense, mainly because of Texas's defense, will probably come down to earth a little bit. But Ohio State's defense matched up against Texas's offense, that's a huge hurdle that Texas has to overcome either with an even better defensive performance or something on offense that we just haven't seen yet, which wouldn't be shocked if Sark came out and did something like that. But I agree with you that Ohio State, I don't think they're going to blow out Texas here, but I think they'll win. They're the better team. Ohio State's on a roll. I will say, though, just on the contrary, to offer it up, that I feel like Texas is more similar in build defensively in terms of talent with a Penn State or with a Michigan and D-line wise Nebraska. So I feel like in comparison to Oregon, who was smaller at DB, who had more of a pass rush D-line, I think that Texas has the build to have success against this offense, but that doesn't guarantee a win against that's the opposite angle that I'm trying to give again because it's a foregone conclusion and I don't want to act like it is. I
Yeah.
think Ohio State's going to win, but this is not a foregone conclusion. It's not. I mean, Texas is too talented and I think built enough of the right way to where this is a game that has to be played and Ohio State has to give a good effort here.
I think one of the big things we don't know, we've not seen it yet with this newfound aggression in the passing game. If Will Howard comes out and he's a little off, what do they do? Do they shut things down? Do they pull back within themselves? Do we start getting more of an offense that we saw against Penn State? What does it look like then? An early turnover, a bad one, that maybe shakes the offensive play calling's confidence. We've not seen any adversity in the last 2 weeks or the last two games, so we don't know how they're going to react to that. And that'll be really interesting. But the other game, buddy, Notre Dame, Penn State, when I look at this, the Notre Dame offense versus the Penn State defense, Jeremiah Love, a little banged up. They're going to be relying a lot on Riley Leonard running the ball. He's not a great thrower of the football. Abdul Carter is such a stud. DDS, I mean, I feel like this is a bit of a mismatch on this side of the ball, and there is no explosion from the Notre Dame offense. I just don't feel like this Notre Dame offense is going to have much success against Penn State. How do you feel about that?
What I think's going to be fascinating is how is the outside leverage here. Notre Dame's off-tackle rushing offense versus Penn State's second level tackling. I think that is the key to that side of the ball because we saw it against Ohio State, for example, where what Ohio State would do is they would line up Judkins or Henderson with Howard, and they would be running a speed option to the side of the field where Ohio State had no receivers, and therefore, because Penn State's running man coverage, no Penn State defender was over there. It was just an easy first down. I feel like
Great.
Mike Denbrock, he's one of the best OCs in the country. So I think that he will test Penn State in that way early. Because if you can get to the second level against Penn State, you can find success. I mean, I think their D-line's the best in the nation outside of maybe Michigan's in terms of getting that interior penetration, really dominating an offensive line. But their linebackers and safeties in the regular season have had issues tackling. And we even saw it a little bit against SMU. So I don't think we can count that out. But I'm in agreement with you that if Abdul Carter is healthy, I don't see much explosiveness because they'll just move him all around the field. With him healthy, Ginty wasn't getting past the line of scrimmage. And I mean, he's a tackle buster. So I'm in agreement with you that this is a matchup that I would say favors Penn State, the offense of Notre Dame versus the defense of Penn State, especially because Penn State's passing defense has had issues, but who from Notre Dame is going to be able to consistently target them there? I don't think anyone.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at as well. I have a soft spot for Drew Aller, so I think my opinion of him is maybe a little overinflated for most people. He's from right over there. Watched him play in high school, like just a hometown kid, you know. I wanted him to be a Buckeye, but he's not. He's over there at Penn State. I always root for him. How do you feel the Penn State offense, which obviously has much more opportunity for explosion with Tyler Warren, with that backfield, than the Notre Dame squad does, in my opinion? How do you feel like they're going to do against this Notre Dame defense, which is also really, really good?
I feel like Penn State will have issues passing to anyone outside of Singleton and Warren. I think that like Xavier Watts will take away whatever side of the field he's on. And then Benjamin Morrison for them is hurt. But like Christian Gray, for example, Adon Schuler, and any of their other DBs against Penn State's wide receivers is kind of that's going to be locked down right there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Tyler Warren is a non-negotiable. I feel like he'll find a way to get some receiving yards. I think that Singleton out of the backfield is a mismatch against anyone. It's similar to Henderson. You have the speed and the hands to be a mismatch against any linebacker that's going to be on you in the passing game. All Aller has to do, I feel like, is just play an okay game with minimal turnovers. He's not been good against top 25 teams this year. When you factor out Boise State, when you look at Power 4 top 25 teams, he hasn't had a passer rating of like over a 120. That's like below average. But they haven't needed him to play well. I don't even think they needed him to play at an elite level like in that OSU game to make it more competitive. They just needed to not turn over the football and produce in the red zone. And I think that if he just, doesn't throw a pick six or doesn't throw a pick and is just overall accurate, and I think maybe feels out blitzes more and handles them better than he did against Boise, I think they'll find a way to get offense, especially with that rushing attack. I think they'll run on this Notre Dame defense, especially with Riley Mills out. I think they'll pop in the second half there.
Do you have a rooting interest in this game? Are you pulling for somebody?
I have to confess that in terms of national, like for just not even winning this game, but winning it all, I kind of want to see Penn State win it all because I think it'd be the most chaotic scenario possible. It just James Franklin, who hasn't won a thing since 2016, just comes out of nowhere and wins. It's like, well, what have you been doing this whole time? Like, why win it now after Ohio State embarrassed you at home and Oregon just kind of was on top of you for the whole game? That's who I'm rooting for. I am pulling for Penn State. I will say that.
I'm kind of like you when my team's not involved. I root for the story, and that's usually like the coolest, wildest story that could happen. I generally feel the same way. I'm pulling for Penn State in this one, but I think that the best matchup, and I'd like to hear yours, the most exciting matchup that we could possibly have just as college football fans is Ohio State, Notre Dame. I mean, it doesn't get any cooler than that in a national championship game to me.
I think that in terms of like just I don't know, like the I guess the eye candy side of football is the best way I could put it. Like that would be the best. Yeah. But I think the most entertaining matchup would be Penn State versus Ohio State or Texas. I feel like Riley Leonard in that offense against Pete Kwiatkowski's or Jim Knowles' defense it'd be unwatchable. It would look like Iowa playing a really good team. In my opinion, no disrespect to Notre Dame, I think Freeman's a top 10 coach. If he can find a way to win with those limitations, if anyone can, I think he would be a guy to do that. But
Sam, who is your pick in this game?
Who is my pick in the Orange Bowl?
Yeah, are you picking Penn State?
Yeah, I'm picking Penn State. It goes against part of my better judgment because I think Freeman has a coaching edge over Franklin, but I think that Penn State's roster has a lot more untapped juice than Notre Dame, and Penn State doesn't turn over the football a lot either, which Notre Dame thrives off of that. So I think those two things give Penn State the victory.
I'm also picking Penn State. My question is, we remember the transfer portal last year. Riley Leonard entered with essentially the non-contact tag on him. Like, we all knew he was going to Notre Dame right off the rip. Why do you think they settled so early for Riley Leonard, a guy with such clear limitations? I mean, I think a lot of people thought this dude was coming in here and he was going to be really good based on that, and had only watched him play those couple of games we saw nationally televised from Duke last year, where he looked really good against Notre Dame. But they brought him in, and it was like, okay, he's off the board. Riley Leonard's going to Notre Dame. This guy is very limited. I was watching him in the coach's film room. I mean, he is just not so hot, man. He really isn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense to me.
It makes some sense to me because I think their receiver room is pretty like meh. Like they have talent there. Like they have Faison, who's very athletic and elusive. But if you were to line up Michigan's wide receiver room and let's say like Oregon's and compare Notre Dame to either of those, they're closer on the Michigan scale of wide receiver rooms, I think, compared to like an Oregon. I think they actually have like bad limitations at wide receiver. I mean, I think Bo Collins at one point, I think before the Indiana game, was their leading receiver. He didn't even have like 500 receiving yards. Like it's Leonard, yes, but I think it's also their receivers too. And Leonard's a really good runner, and that complements with their backs and their O-line. Like there's a reason they're averaging 6 yards per pop nationally.
I asked my buddy JR this question. I'm going to ask you the same question. You get the Oklahoma AD job tomorrow, and you are hiring a new coach to bring OU back, compete in the SEC, and you've got an opportunity to hire any one of these four coaches. Who you calling, and in what order with these four coaches remaining? Somebody joining the KIRBY DABO club. I think that's really fascinating. But who you calling first to fourth out of these guys?
I would call Ryan Day first. I'd call Marcus Freeman second.
Marcus over Sark.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think Freeman's younger, and I think that in a few years he might be like more than top 10. Just the fact he beat Kirby is enough to like, hey, like, come on, get over here, especially with how good of a recruiter he is at a place like Notre Dame. Yeah, third would be Sark. Fourth would have to be Franklin. I mean, the SEC is just, I think even though it was overvalued this year and the top Big Ten teams were better than the top SEC teams this year, just like last year, by the way. I think 2023 Ohio State would beat 2023 Georgia or Bama, and not easily, but I think it's clear they would win. The fact that Franklin struggles in these big games is just something that I can't have, especially with what is likely going to be a rebuild. I mean, he's good at rebuilds, but if I'm Oklahoma, I want to win, and I want to win big sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I think that those three are better than Franklin at that as of now.
I dig it. I think I would go, I would flip-flop Sark and Freeman, but that might change depending on this next game. The dude has certainly impressed me to an incredible degree. I mean, absolutely. I think he is just, I was just saying this the other day with Chris. I mean, he's a leader of men. He always says the right thing. He's humble but confident. He's good looking. He's charismatic. Like, he's got it all. Smart as a whip. You know, he's just got it all. And it's dangerous. It really is what he could do over there. It's dangerous. So, buddy, I got one more question. Somebody is joining the KIRBY DABO club. Still amazing to me that we only have 2 active national championship winning coaches. Who do you got? Who's joining the club?
It's it has to be Ohio State right now. It has to be, but like I don't like picking games in advance, and I am scared. I am scared that it will be someone that I don't like, that it could be Freeman, or that it could be Franklin, or it could be Sark. I mean, I'm going with Day right now. I think it's the obvious choice. I think he has the best team. I think he's the best coach. But like you mentioned, like from the betting angle, I'm terrified because the power ratings and the book see something that no one else does. And that is yikes. I just don't know. But I would lean Ohio State and Ryan Day right now if I could.
Season of dreams, buddy. Sam, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody, you can check out our buddy Sam at College Football with Sam. He's excellent, particularly the Big Ten, the best in the business, soon to be the whole country. Check him out. Appreciate you so much, Sam. Thanks, buddy. And that's my guy, Sam. Remember, tomorrow is Thursday, the big game, Notre Dame, Penn State. I've got Penn State winning. I'm also rooting for Penn State, but I'll be happy if Notre Dame wins, because Notre Dame, Ohio State, I think is just a ridiculous matchup for a national championship. It's a matchup for a national championship that we should have seen in 2012, but we did not get to because we did not have a self-imposed bowl ban the year prior. Whatever, water under the bridge. We just might get it this year. During that game, we're going to go live here. First time I've done that. We're going to have the chat open so we can go live, watch the game together. I'll, call the game, whatnot. And we'll just talk about the game, because the winner of that game, hopefully, will be our opponent, and we won't find that out whether or not we advance till the following day. But I got no skin in the game. Most likely you don't either. So we're going to watch that game, check those guys out, and talk here in the chat. So do pop in and check me out. And I appreciate you guys so much. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks.
Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes. The Juck eyes.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.